it was kind of an intense issue, and before I knew it, and I'm sweating and my heart's beating, the issue was over and I could relax. So I'm glad that I stuck with that one. What's going on, everybody? GemMint here with today's new comic book day reviews. It's Wednesday, June 1st, the first of the month, and I'm going to go through this week's comics as spoiler free as possible. Before we get started, just want to remind you I'm going to be live on Whatnot today at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern for a 1-hour live comic book auction. I'm going to have some omnibus, some hardcovers, some variants, plus I have a CGC 9.8 giveaway, and it's just the first hour of a 9-hour long show that we've got put together for you guys as part of our Whatnot Wednesday. So if you haven't yet, download Whatnot. The link's in the description. It'll give you a $10 credit that you can use towards your first purchase. Before I jump into this week's books, I did have to go back and pick up Saga. I missed out on issue 59, Fiona Staples, Brian K. Vaughan. So here's the thing with Saga for me. When I first got into Saga, I had trouble getting into it, and I put it down. I ended up going back to it later, reading the 3 hardcovers, and I loved it. I loved reading it back to back. But with the relaunch of this series, I'm feeling the same way. I'm not into the story. I don't really know what's going on here. The mother's away, the kid's with this guy, family friend or whatever, and, you know, what's the main thing here? Like, I'm a little bit lost, and I'm just not really interested in it. Maybe I'll read it when it's collected, but for right now, I'm gonna chill on Saga. We're gonna move on over to Image with Firepower, Image Skybound, I should say, Robert Kirkman with Chris Samney. So, as I'm reading this, it's always flashy, it's always fast-paced, it's always got nice fight scenes, and I can't help thinking, like, are they prepping this for another animated series? It feels like something that would translate well to that. You have the 2 head of the clans, the old guy with the serpent guy fighting. Meanwhile, the big thing from the last issue is that the dragon that we've heard all about since the series started is free, wreaking havoc, and on the side of the serpents, it seems. So, loving this series so far. I wish these issues lasted longer. It's just kind of like super fast and quick, but hey, let's go to Dark Horse real quick, and we have Demons, issue 3, completing this first kind of chapter, I guess you would say, by Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, joined by Jonathan Glapion, Dave McCaig, and Tom Polianto. So I know this was like a Comixology series. It was already released digitally. I'm reading it for the first time, and it gives me heavy early 90s Image Day vibes, like when Capullo was doing Spawn and like just drawing monsters for the hell of drawing monsters because they look cool. And then even the good guys here, the guys with the halo, right? Because it's the halo and the horn. They even have like superhero qualities to them because they look like Capullo's Bruce Wayne, like in the eyes. They just have that superhero feel. I don't feel like they're branded well enough yet. The names aren't familiar enough yet. But I like what they're doing there and how this kind of whole thing is a metaphor for good and bad. Everybody has a little bit of good in them, a little bit of bad, or they'll say horn or halo. So I kind of like that metaphor. It was kind of touching. And I want to give a big thank you to Dynamite Entertainment for sponsoring this video. They have 3 titles that are out today: Vampirella Dracula Unholy issue 6, Dynamite Never Dies issue 4, and Red Sonja Red SITHA issue 2. Now I'm reading this one because I wanted to find a good jumping on point for Red Sonja, and this is it. It's not really Red Sonja. You're really following Red SITHA, which is a descendant, and this is a cool story. I mean, she's linking up with a so-called brother. They're trying to figure out who has their parents kidnapped. They end up in this desert oasis of a city, and her confidence and her Red Sonja-isms I just love. I think that it's just it fits her well, and you don't really have to have much prior knowledge of the character. Like I said, you could jump on with the last issue. In this issue, I feel like it gets even better. So that's Red SITHA. Moving back over to Image, we're gonna go Little Monsters. This is issue 4 by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. I'm kind of glad that I stuck with this series, and that's going to be a little bit of a theme throughout this video. I'm glad I stuck with it. I like the idea of these kids that are in this post-apocalyptic world. They don't know where the parents are, and they just have this hunger. Come to find out they're vampires, and they're feeding on everybody. So this story kind of follows this kid's transition from being like a human, not really wanting to eat other people, and then giving into it. So it's kind of sick and dark if you think about it, but it's got this great black and white sketchy style to it. It's got light color and such. I kind of criticized that when I first read it, like, is this another black, white, and red, or black, white, and blood? But nah, it's definitely its own thing, man. I was digging it. Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. This is issue, what is it, 8 already? Man, they make the number small as hell on this cover. Rick Remender, Andre Lima Araujo, and Chris O'Halloran, and Russ Wooten. So this was another one that I was gonna skip it, but I was kind of ahead on my reading, and I was like, all right, we'll take a read. First of all, I read it in 2 seconds. This series continues to let the art tell the story. It doesn't bog you down with a lot of dialogue. Intense torture scenes here are, like I said, would-be hero that stumbled upon the black web of mercenaries, trying to save this kid. This kid looks like he's about to be tortured. He ends up taking his place. It was kind of an intense issue, and before I knew it, and I'm sweating and my heart's beating, the issue was over, and I could relax. So I'm glad that I stuck with that one. We're on to issue 6 of What's the Furthest Place from Here? Boss and Rosenberg with Oatsmain Alejo. Someone told me I was saying it wrong the other day. I forgot the right way to say it. I've been sticking with this series. I don't like when they do a new chapter every 2 pages, and like you name the chapter after like the one sentence that was in those 2 pages. I don't know. I'm a little bit over this one. It kind of feels like Little Monsters, but Little Monsters is like the kind of artistic style one, and this one is kind of like the Mike Judge cartoony style. These families, these factions, everybody's beefing. It's kind of showing how these like Lord of the Flies children gangs in this post-apocalyptic world, how their politics work. I don't know. I'm kind of not really digging this. Yeah, I do want to know who the strangers are. Where are all the adults? Why are these kids all alone by themselves? But I don't know. I'm kind of giving up on it. And then we're on to the Scorched issue 6 by Sean Lewis and Steven Segovia. Continuing to enjoy the Spawn series stuff. This is the team-up book, so we get Haunt, who gets thrown now into the Spawn universe, facing Blood, a Vampire King. Excellent artwork here. The team up with Gunslinger Spawn and Mark, who was Haunt's guy in the chair, who ends up now changing into medieval Spawn, throwing She-Spawn in the mix, and Spawn kind of like Nick Furying everything behind the scenes, fighting demonic enemies and such. Everything's about the dead zones, everything's about hell and heaven coming after all the spawns and everything. It has great action, amazing artwork, awesome coloring, so gonna continue to pull all the Spawn books each month. And the last one from the indies, we have The Closet, issue 1. This is by James Tynion. He's joined by Fullerton, O'Halloran, and Napoleonto, so same creators from before. Man, Tynion knows how to tell some freaky horror-esque stories, but not being too much, just kind of enough to be suspenseful, but still interesting. This is all about this family that's moving out of this house. It's their last day. The child has been living there, scared of what's in the closet for the entire time. And of course, in this twisted comic book, there really is a monster in the closet. Just when everybody thinks they'll be safe because they're moving out of the house, they might not want to speak too soon, man. Definitely pick this up if you're into these type of suspenseful indie horror James Tynion type of books, man. If you're digging Something Is Killing the Children, this is kind of up the alley. You see the girl with her little doll and everything on the front, so definitely check it out. Moving on over to Marvel Comics, we're going to start with Alien. They're on issue 12, which ends the second arc. It's Philip Kennedy Johnson with Salvador LaRocca and Guru EFX. I really love how they incorporated the sickness from the leader of this planet, the woman that was in charge of this colony on this terraformed planet, and how her sickness was really what helped her survive in this situation. The looming atmosphere and the artwork, again, it just feels like the movies. I think Philip Kennedy Johnson is doing great things with Aliens. It looks like we're continuing the run, so awesome to see a modern Aliens run. I mean, we're going on 13 issues now. I don't know what the hell happened with Predator. I think they had a problem with the license or with the rights or whatever, but we're getting great Alien stuff. Moving on over to Black Panther, we're already on issue 6. Ridley, Landini, and Milla. I like this series. T'Challa starts off so strong. He's the king of Wakanda. He's got sleeper agents everywhere. Well, that all blows up in his face quite literally as he's hunted down by these white panthers, if you will. But the Storm interaction here is worth the read. I think it's worth picking up the trade to reading up to this issue to get the Storm T'Challa stuff at the end. So love it, and they all have Alex Ross covers, so you're probably better off picking up the back issues. Another title that I almost dropped, I didn't like issue 2 of Strange, but issue 3, again, it was kind of one of those things where I had the time, let me check it out, and I'm glad I did. McKay, Ferreira, Poggi, Mo, and Tartaglia. I'm sorry, I'm reading it, it's really small. The cover's amazing. Yo, Clea Strange showed why she was a badass. I think she showed it in issue 1, right? Didn't she school Dr. Doom? And I was into it. I don't know what happened in issue 2 that I lost my interest, but issue 3, her going up against the Rose. Now, not a threatening villain or anything, but I love how she puts him in his place, man. And it really shows her power here as she's trying to figure out, she needed information on the whereabouts of Scum. So who else better than Scum to ask was kind of the thing here. Big magical panels and fight scenes that reminded me of like the Doctor Strange 90s omnibus. So man, if you were thinking about dropping it like me at issue 2, I would say stick around for issue 3, or even get caught up. Ghost Rider's on issue 3. I'm loving me some Ghost Rider. Benjamin Percy with Smith, Peoples, Poggi, and Valenza. I love this cover. It's amazing, and the whole Ghost Rider semi-truck thing happens here, man. And I love this story. It really felt like a horror type of story and not a superhero story. The Ghost Rider transformation here was so rewarding. It was like, boom, and it was also one of those things where somebody might argue we needed a little bit more Ghost Rider in this issue because they really kind of held off until the last moment here. But I liked the Johnny Blaze stuff. It's good to get that again. And then we get the transformation. It's a great issue, man. Loving Ghost Rider right now. Big and flashy as well, just like Strange. Then we have Carnage, issue 3, Ram V, along with Antonio and Dijo. Man, Carnage was so ruthless in this issue. So the tease at the end of the last issue was, he took the powers and the essence or what have you of Hydro Man, then he dropped in on the Spot. So this is Carnage and the Spot. Imagine him having those type of like teleportation powers, if you will, a spot dimension. So that was ruthless. And then his sniveling little wannabe host, kind of lackey, following him, but kind of proving himself a little bit here. I did think he got ahead of himself here, and I'm glad that Carnage checked him. Now, what's interesting is in this run, and I don't want to get too spoilery, but I'm going to say this: the Carnage symbiote is on its own. We kind of figure out where Cletus is in all of this. So that's an interesting take here that people will be talking about. And the last one from Marvel, we have X-Men 92, House of... What is that? Is that 1992? What are those Roman numerals? This is by Steve Fox, Salva Espin, and Israel Silva. It feels like they gave it to a team who wrote animated series episodes. So this is the animated series X-Men in comic book form at the dawn of the new millennium, but the Krakoa story. Now, I don't want this to get too spoilery, so this is what I'm going to say. They basically give us Hickman's Krakoa, Hickman's Hoxpox, in the animated series form, but they kind of Days of Future past it and change who one of the main characters were for that story, if that without giving spoilers, right? So me, reading that and saying, okay, they did that with Rogue in the movies, right? They made Rogue instead of Kitty Pryde, put Wolverine into the past. So they kind of do that here. I'm okay with it. If Hickman was okay with it, I'm sure he had to write off on this, and they're basically adapting his story to an animated series story, but it's still a comic book. It's got the comic book art style. We get to see all of our favorite characters because it's everyone from Hoxpox. It's Apocalypse, Sabretooth, Wolverine, Lady Deathstrike, everyone. So it's cool to see them in like the animated series style, but I think people are going to be pissed off at who is the person who's having the multiple lives. So I'll leave it at that as we move on to DC. And we're going to start with what's not pick of the week, A Nice House on the Lake, issue 9. It looks like there's going to be one more issue. James Tynion, Alvaro Martinez Bueno, and Jordi Belair. So I love this series. It's kind of feeling like the same thing over and over again, but we're learning a little bit more here that Walter might not have just messed with them in the ways that they know of, but he may have messed with them by removing memories that they've had. So there's somebody trying to help the crew in the house, and we're seeing that unfold as we're seeing Walter and his plan kind of being exposed a little bit more. It looks like aliens doing an experiment with the last humans on Earth, but it could be that's what it looks like and it turns out to be something else. I'm kind of hoping that's what happens, but we got to wait to see with what looks like the next issue, because if I'm following along on these little things, there's only one more left. So we'll see what happens there as we are on the road to Dark Crisis. This is Justice League Road to Dark Crisis issue 1. It all starts here with a long cast because this is an oversized issue with multiple stories that basically forms the new Justice League in the wake of the death of the Justice League. And it's going to be the new JL who saves them, essentially. So how do we get Jonathan Kent and Nightwing to be Batman and Robin? Boom. How do we get the Flash? Which Flash are we using? I don't even remember. Boom. We got Green Lantern and Aqualad or whoever. So they're forming that team. Joshua Williamson, Dan Jurgens. We got Adams, Brown, Johnson, Del Duca, Phillips, Henry, and many more. So at first, as I'm reading it, I'm like, this doesn't really warrant an "It All Starts Here" title, but I guess technically it does. It's forming the team who's going to save the day, presumably. With that beginning, we have an end, as all things do. We have Shadow War Omega, also by Joshua Williamson, Segovia, Porter, and Hi-Fi. So the cataclysmic conclusion, and the reason why it says that is because the big tease at the end of last issue was Geoforce was the imposter Deathstroke, right? So that was corny. and it was supposed to be, and they show this character that looks like he has a cheesy outfit, but they kind of make him look really evil, and they make him look powerful and intimidating. So that was pretty cool. The interaction with Talia al Ghul and the reuniting of Bruce Wayne and Damian Wayne, it was a nice little series. It kind of put everything where it needs to be now to move forward, but we are missing one major character that I'm not going to spoil, and I don't really think they'll be gone for that long, but hey, pretty cool. And that's going to bring us on over to an annual, Batman Annual 2022. Kind of like how they have the years again and not the numbers. Ed Brisson, right, and Timms and Lucas. So this is basically a Batman Incorporated issue. And I don't really want to give a spoiler here, so I'm not going to spoil it, but we have a new leader of Batman Incorporated, so that's pretty interesting. And I like Clown Hunter testing all of the Batman Incorporated members, and I like his thought process. Like, how can you just let people join this organization? They don't have the dedication, the skills, the training that we have, and I was with him, man. So I like how he tested him out and everything. He's got Clown Hunter as his sidekick, and he kind of gets a pass. He's not really qualified, but he's working with him. It's like his little protege. So I did like that annual, but I had to give my pick of the week to the Action Comics Annual 2022. Isn't that something? I had no idea, man. I didn't expect it. I used to not like annuals, but I started picking them up because they started actually mattering and connecting with the overall stories. I didn't like the annuals that were just 80 pages full of bullshit, zany strips that don't tie into anything. Like, I don't got time for that. This was an awesome issue. This was the Tale of Two Titans, so showing Clark Kent and Mongol growing up as kids simultaneously, and how their different environments, cultures, how their mothers treated them, how it formed and raised two completely different men. And you really understand why Mongol is the way he is and why Superman is the way he is at the end of this issue. They do such a good job of that. And what I think they do an even better job of is showing us a young Clark Kent making a lot of mistakes as a young boy, and Martha disciplining him or correcting him and teaching him, and how that mattered. So I thought that was a nice take too, that they didn't even have to do. It was a badass story. The Mongol stuff, the Warzone stuff, his mother was a total badass, but it made him not have that nurturing aspect. Anyway, great annual. Pick this up, man. Even if you're not reading Action, which is all War World and it has to do with Mongol, you can use this as a one-shot, or you can use this as more depth to the character that we're reading in this overall story right now. So great issue, man. And that's the new comic book days for today, the first of the month. Let me know what your favorites were in the comments down below. But most importantly, man, I better see y'all on Whatnot later today. We got great stuff going on. We're going to be chilling, if you know what I mean. So stay minty fresh. Peace.